Our next speaker this afternoon is Rachel West Captain, 2021 Monica-Clare-Research Fellow. Rachel's project is now in its 7th year of its proposed 10-year program of research, collation and publication. Everything is going very well. Rachel is gearing up, ready in 2026 for an exciting unveiling to the family who own this story and research. But there's a far wider audience that's very interested in this area of research, and Rachel has been looking at supporting that. There are 8 clans near the borders around the Lightning Ridge area of New South Wales, areas near Bolen and Mitchell in southwest Queensland too. And Rachel's study includes the groups of the Murruwarri, the Gungari, the Uwelai, Kuma, Kunya, Mandandanji and Gamilaroi peoples. Rachel is hopeful that the final outcome of this long-term project will be a total of 4 publications that will encompass her entire work, including the First Nations story of her stolen generation family, her personal adoption journey of finding and meeting her maternal First Nations family as well as her paternal English family, a publication about researching Aboriginal history, and a First Nations family history research publication outlining her journey to assist other First Nations peoples who are venturing on their own family history discovery journey. Other outcomes that Rachel will achieve within the scope of this particular project is an operational website designed to assist people who are researching material for educational purposes. That sounds like a tremendous resource. And in the long term, she envisions that her family story will be told in film, in the form of a documentary, a series, or a movie. So very exciting and huge commitment. There will be also the unveiling of an extremely large ancestry family tree one day, encompassing many families of southwest Queensland and northwest New South Wales. I would really like you to please welcome Rachel to the stage to tell us a little bit more.
Thank you. My research project is named the West and Captain Family, a Murruwarri family from southwest Queensland and northwest New South Wales. I am so grateful for the opportunity I was given by State Library of Queensland to further my research into my family history and into the history of the original people of southwest Queensland and northwest New South Wales. My research has focused on the clan groups of the Murruwarri in New South Wales and Queensland, the Gungari people of Mitchell in Queensland, the Kuma people of Bolen, Queensland, and the Uwelai and Gamilaroi people of the Walgett and Gaduga areas of New South Wales. These are the tribes with whom my family identify with, the Murruwarri, Gungari, Kuma and Uwelai people, as well as the Gamilaroi people. Due to the uncertainty of which people group my family identified with, I've also spent time looking into the family groups and traditions of the people from close by areas of where my family came from, in trying to determine if my family had any cultural connections with any other people. So my research encompasses the Uwelai, the Mandandanji and Kunya people. I've been chipping away at this fascinating project of mine since 2016, which is the year in which I found my family. I was adopted, and after 31 years of not knowing who I was and where I came from, I finally, amazingly, found my birth mother's family. My birth mother is Rosalind Margaret West, and she was the 5th born child of my grandma's 12 children. My grandmother is Joan Margaret West. She's the daughter of Bindi West from Bolen, Queensland, and Teresa Captain from Mitchell, Queensland. Grandma Joni was born in Gadooga, New South Wales around 1939, after my family was removed from their homelands on Tongi Station in Boland, Queensland. My grandmother's 12 children were all removed from her in governmental stolen generation practices during the 13-year period between 1963 and 1976, including her last-born children, a set of triplets who were separated into two families. Since the time I found my family and met my family, it has been an extraordinary passion of mine to find out my grandmother's story and to honour her life, and to try my hardest to reunite and bring her family back together as much as I possibly could. This mission has been successful in some ways. However, the time keeps flying past, and my oldest uncle is now 60 and has still only met 2 of his 11 siblings. And my youngest uncle is still yet to meet 5 of his surviving siblings. I was incredibly grateful to facilitate the meeting of one of his brothers just this last year, and I don't think you can even imagine how beyond special that was. There are 3 of my grandmother's children who have now joined my grandma in the next life, including my mum, Rosalind, my oldest uncle, Wayne, and my uncle, Billy. My oldest uncle, Wayne, was sent to Kinchela Boys' Home around 1969, aged 13. He was there with my grandmother's older sister, Nita West's son, who was also removed in stolen generation practices. I'm not sure if you are aware of the reputation of Kinchela Boys' Home, but it was one of the worst. Uncle Wayne also spent time as a state ward at Darook Training School, aged 17, in 1973, as a so-called institution inmate. My Uncle Wayne spoke of the atrocities he suffered at Kinchela with family members later on. Uncle Wayne died in his 30s in 1991. He was never compensated for the horrors of his stolen generation removal from his mother, nor repatriated for the atrocities he suffered in Kinchela Boys' Home. My mother met my Uncle Wayne out in Sydney one time. They didn't know one another and were attracted to each other. They then asked each other about their birth parents, and lo and behold, both of their birth mother's name was Joan Margaret West. That is how they found each other. Isn't that an amazing story? Incredible the way the universe works in bringing you to know exactly what you need to know at exactly the time you're supposed to know it. Like, it's amazing that I had to wait the first 30 years of my life to find my family, not knowing who I was, who I come from, my identity. But it was all by design. I was perfectly ready by the time I was 31 to move and act on the incredible rollercoaster ride of meeting all of my family, who are scattered across the country. My grandmother has exactly 50 living descendants as we speak today, with her first great-great-grandchild on the way. So I had a lot of people to meet. I've only just now, 6 years later, after meeting almost all of my immediate birth family, started on the epic journey of meeting my second and third cousins, of which there are multitudes. It is the gift that keeps on giving, family. I love my family, and I'm so proud of the family of my family and the roots that I've discovered I come from. I've also been busy meeting my birth father's family over the last few years too. So that's a bit of background to my story and my research project. I hope you are still with me, and I hope you are as intrigued as I am to find out more. There is lots more, and there is so much more that I had allocated myself a 10-year period with which to complete my family history research and to compile all of my findings into a book, which I will lovingly present to my family so that they can finally get to know who their family is and who their family was as well. I cannot wait for that day, and gosh, I hope I can do it justice the way it needs to be. I am 6 or 7 years into the 10-year project, and last year I finally made it out onto my family's country for the first time. This was a truly amazing experience. I've been out on my family's country 3 times now last year, starting with southwest Queensland in January 2022, where I spent 6 days away out at Mitchell and Boland, as well as Roma and St. George. This is where my great-grandmother's family came from. She and her siblings were born in Mitchell in the 1890s on a property named East Woodlands Station. I was unable to locate this property during the time I was there this time. However, I was able to locate the properties which she was living on when she was a child, named Foilview. And the property right next door was Albany Downs, where my great-grandmother, Teresa Captain, was working when she was in her late teens to early 20s. My great-grandmother tried to track down her stolen wages from working on properties later on. However, there was no record, apparently, of any money held in any account for her, so was therefore unsuccessful in recovering any of these wages she had been led to believe existed for her work. It was a truly breathtaking, amazing experience to be standing at the very place that my great-grandmother had been before and where she came from. My experience in Mitchell was extraordinarily satisfying, and I incredibly, unbelievingly stumbled across some of my family there, which was discovered due to a casual check upon discovering that we had both had our ancestry DNA tested. And there we were, sitting as a match. We had only spent the last 2 hours together talking about Aboriginal history in Mitchell, as they had been the ladies I'd been advised were the ones to speak with regarding Gungari people knowledge, Auntie Lynette Nixon and her daughter, Sarah Eva Mitchell. So this DNA match to both of these extraordinary ladies led me to an enormous discovery of my Aboriginal ancestry going way back. As this family I discovered I was connected to has been able to preserve more of their ancestry and family history and the names of their ancestors. I discovered I likely descend from a man named Old Frog, who was a rainmaker in Mitchell in the 1850s. Patsy Saunders, their family historian, has done a beautiful job researching and collating her family and my family's history. And I aspire to do a similar job in presenting to my family our Aboriginal ancestry and heritage and our family history. My ultimate goal is to go back as far as possible with my Aboriginal family history, and this is just about as good as it gets, an ancestor from the 1850s, considering that I'll likely only be able to go back as far as the 1780s when Cook got here, and that will be an extraordinary stretch to find that information. However, not beyond the realms of possibility, and I am determined. I had been hoping to be able to follow up leads such as this by spending as much of my time as possible in the John Oxley Library at the State Library of Queensland, trawling the countless resources, but unfortunately that was unable to come to fruition, as there was this unfortunate thing I had to do called work. to make a living, to survive, you know. And then there was the lockout if you didn't take the needle. At which time I decided to move away from Brisbane, up to an amazing place I discovered, named Amamore. Destiny called me to Amamore for an incredible spiritual awakening corroboree event with the Kabi people in November 2021. 3 weeks later, following my falling in love with the place and meeting some very special people who became my friends, I moved away from Brisbane to a place called the Palms, just outside of Gympie, close by Amamore. I had spent 5.5 months in Brisbane since I moved there from New South Wales in July 2021 to make the most of my fellowship opportunity. I now live in gorgeous Imbil, where I drive the Mary Valley and Amamore school bus, which is an absolutely delightful job that allows me the hours during the day to carry out my research and work on my Aboriginal ancestry and my family history and discover knowledge on the clans with whom I have an interest in researching, with the intentions of publishing a book in 2026. I also have hopes of publishing my research on an internet site, and last year allowed me to make great progress in this, having enrolled in the TAFE course Diploma of Information Technology, front-end and back-end web design. I've been able to learn the skills of designing a web page using Visual Studio Code, which is no mean feat, and an epic and exciting skill to have up my sleeve. And I've secured my own web domain page in which I will be able to use to eventually present all of my research and make available to the groups of people who have an interest in my area of research, which will include Aboriginal people, people of southwest Queensland and northwest New South Wales tribal clans of the Murruwarri, Uwallarei, Goongarri, Cooma, Gamilaroi, Uwaliye, Mandandangi and Kunya people, those 8 Aboriginal tribes or people groups. And I do hope that school children will be able to carry out research and explore and learn through the use of my website when it is built and up and running. It is currently in its foundational stages, as there is a lot to be done in between, with building a book for my family and a book for the general public, as well as hopes and dreams of capturing my family's tragic and hopeful Aboriginal Australian story in film to share with the people of this country, and opening the hearts of many people in highlighting exactly in just one family's case so many factors that affect the Aboriginal people of today. I hope to give people a heart to empathise and understand where there may not currently be empathy and understanding. This is a lifelong commitment to dedicating my life to my family and my family history research, and honouring my grandma Joni West and her tragic life, which ended in her murder in Lightning Ridge in 1981, in the grounds behind Butterfly Avenue. I was able to discover this on my second trip onto country in June and July last year, whereby I went to visit Gadooga for the first time and meet my second cousins in Walgett for the first time, and spend an extensive 2 weeks on country, tracing my grandma and my great-grandparents' history in the Walgett and Gadooga areas. It was an extremely special time I had there, very spiritual and very meaningful, with lots of memories captured in audio, thankfully, as the matriarch of the West and Captain family has just recently passed in October 2022. I'm so thankful I got there in time to meet with her and ask her of her memories and information and knowledge before it was just too late. My time spent with my dear Auntie Nina Bonnie, my grandma's niece, the matriarch of the remaining Wests and Captain family, was very precious indeed, and I mourn her loss severely, as do her many beautiful children and her huge Bonnet family. My third trip out onto country was in September 2022 for the Gadooga reunion. I went out to Gadooga in the company of the twins Nerily and Leah Sheldon, whose parents used to own the Gadooga shop. It was again a most awesome thing to feel being back on my family's country, where my family had spent much of their time and where they had lived and come from. Being in Gadooga at the Gadooga Tin Camp and in the town of Gadooga itself, among families who my family had been associated with. It was a blessing to meet sisters and elders, Vera and Josie Bino, the Bino girls, who remembered my great-grandmother Teresa Captain fondly and spoke of when she used to teach them Sunday school from her home on the Gadooga Reserve, house number 26. House number 26 at the Gadooga Tin Camp, where my grandma Joni West was born. I'm not sure exactly where she was born yet, I hope to find that out one day. But House 26 was captured in a uni thesis written by Stephanie Smith, and all of the families and houses in the Gadooga Reserve were captured in this precious report. Which was one of the starting points of my research all these years ago. I'm so thankful for the precious information captured by Stephanie Smith in her uni thesis on the unique architecture of the Gadooga Tin Camp. In her writing, she has been able to preserve so much of Gadooga's Aboriginal history, and I was able to learn much of my family and their home in Gadooga, seeing photos and map positioning of House 26, where the West family lived. I was also able to physically visit the very place where my great-grandparents' house used to stand, in Gadooga, where Clem and Isabel Orcher now live. That was so surreal, very special and hard to put into words what it meant to me and what it means to me now. It's hard to imagine what it would have been like at the Gadooga Tin Camp back then, given how different it looks now, with most of the tin houses gone, just audible memories from the people who lived there as children, which I have captured as much as possible and hope I can recreate in film one day. What a monumental task that will be. Maybe my descendants or my grandmother's other great-grandchildren will take that project on, if I am unable to complete it before I die in around 60 years' time, aged 100. Surely that will be enough time to get it together and make it come to life. It takes dedication, and I must admit that a lot of distractions get in the way, like unexpectedly finding a boyfriend, and sometimes purposely creating other hobbies such as gardening and cooking to fill my time with nice things, whilst my project sits to the side until my next wave of go time occurs, and it's on for as long as the run lasts. I wish it could be a more permanent fixture in my time and daily life, but sometimes it needs to sit to the side for a while, sadly, because it's very important work that needs to be carried out, and time is passing, and my aunties want to know their family history. No pressure. No, seriously, no pressure at all from them, just the pressure I place on myself in getting this done, and getting it done well, and completely and wholly, with all of the justice and honour and grace it deserves in capturing the West and Captain family history, so my family can finally know who their family truly is, who their mum, Joan West, was, and who their grandma and great-grandparents were, and our connection to our culture, which was completely cut off when my grandma's children were taken from her, and her 50 living descendants were cut off from their culture and their country. I don't mean to go on about that, but it's just a fact, and it's the most hugest fact in our family, affecting each and every one of us Westies in its own differing trauma-filled way. That's what intergenerational trauma is, and it very much exists within our family, following my mum and all my aunties and uncles becoming members of the stolen generation. I vow to honour my grandma, Joan Margaret West, and her family, my original ancestry. Thank you, Queensland Library Foundation and the Monica-Clare-Research Fellowship. My family, the West and Captain family, thanks you for what you are making possible for our family.